Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and we are here at the great Telco debate in London. In fact, by London Wall, this is it. This is the old wall of Londinium when it was a Roman colony, a Roman town, and 1800 years old. Still there, not bad. Dean, great to see you, as usual.
Cheers.
Been a good day at the event today.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hasn't it? Been a really interesting day.
Inspiring and sort of fast-paced as well.
And yes, very different. I really enjoyed it. Now, I want to ask you about something we were hearing about earlier during the day that wasn't filmed before. It's about this notion of agility in telcos.
Yeah.
Telcos in the past have never been noted for being agile, and as you have said yourself, there's more than one way of being agile as well. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, I've been looking into particularly sort of SDN and NFV, the whole concept of sort of virtualization for service providers recently, and sort of trying to align that with other stuff I'm doing in looking at sort of future service innovation and deployment. And this concept of agility comes up a lot, and the usual answer for what are we going to get from the software telco is we are able to be agile, which means to move freely or fast in any direction and to change direction. But it strikes me, and this is something I was saying. I was with Metaswitch at their event yesterday, talking about this and understanding what does agility really mean for a service provider. And the question is can you be agile in the right direction? Yeah, it's all very well being able to sort of scale a wall if you're a climber or doing bouldering, but you need to be able to be sure of the route up the wall before you start setting out, and you may well be very flexible. And what this means from a service provider point of view is understanding the problems they're trying to solve. There's certain internal issues around cost and scaling of new services, which certainly really could benefit from the sort of capabilities you were going to get in the next generation of software networks. But beyond that, if you want to earn new revenues and enter new markets, there's a requirement to understand customers, and really not what customers want in terms of just an application, but why they're using it. And I think that this aspect of customer insight and solving problems that are extant in the world beyond the telecoms industry is something we've not really been very good at in the past.
Now then, Dean, as the founder of Disruptive Analysis, you spend a lot of time, you've got a wide remit, both geographically and intellectually, and you have recently been spending quite a lot of time with futurologists. Why? What have you got out of it?
Well, I mean, I think sometimes it's fun to look a little beyond the sort of 2-year horizon that a lot of the normal sort of industry research covers. And one of the things that strikes me is that the really big trends in society, and therefore for the telecoms industry as well, is where we see 2 or more intersecting megatrends. You know, we can take one of them as being around the communications industry, mobile broadband, smartphones, and so on. Yeah. But the interesting thing is where that overlaps with, it could be the Internet of Things, it could be new fintech, financial technologies, new forms of government, it could be robots and drones, it could be machine learning and artificial intelligence. Because historically, where we've just had the next generation of a mobile network or transition to IP, primarily, we've been doing what we did before, but faster, cheaper, slightly better. We only really get the true innovations and sort of really unexpected growth where you have this coincidence of multiple technology and societal trends.
Well, explain.
So, I mean, Internet of Things is a good one. Yeah. Where we have the capability to offer communications much more effectively across a wide area, whether it's wireless or fixed with opticals. But we also, at the same time, have miniaturization of computing, distributed computing in devices, whether that's a wearable device or whether it's a sensor or thousands of sensors instrumenting an oil rig. And that allows us to do a whole range of things. We've got the connectivity, and we've got this sort of capability to measure and act on the real world with IoT. And so at one level you could have, let's say, preventative maintenance on machines, where there's a huge proportion of the world's GDP is tied up in machinery, and if something goes wrong, it is far better to fix it before it breaks than after. And so if you can instrument the world so that you see signs of impending failure in a machine or something like that, and you send an alert, you communicate between a supervisor and a technician to send an engineer out preemptively, that's a huge win for global productivity, and consequently for anyone who's providing both the connectivity and the IT systems behind that. It also works the other way around. So you look at the telecoms industry, and the telecoms industry can itself benefit from IoT. So you could use drones, for example, to measure cellular signal strength, not just at places on the road, but even indoors or at different altitudes. For cities like Singapore and Hong Kong with a lot of high rises, it's a three-dimensional problem, not a two-dimensional one. And the same thing from sensors in pieces of equipment. Again, looking for either impending failure or perhaps demonstrating that they can survive at higher thresholds of temperature before there's a problem and reduce on fuel and aircon costs.
Fascinating. So when you're doing this, and it's an ongoing process, what have you seen as being the most likely immediately available application of this sort of thinking and the way these intersections are taking place?
Well, certainly I think the intersection of telecoms and IoT is high on the list, but I also think there's some really interesting stuff going on around machine learning, AI, cognitive computing, call it what you will. And I think that this will allow us to reorient our communications services applications, so voice, video, messaging, to underlying problems, so to really solving the underlying contextual situations and problems that the customers want. So a good example might be a sales call. Now, at the moment, we treat that as a phone call, and maybe we're running it from Salesforce or some other application. But what we'd really want is to have information that's relevant to both the salesperson and the person being sold to surfaced during the call or before the call. So it might well be that the network or the software says to the salesperson, your client is at the airport and running. Maybe we should reschedule the call for 2 hours' time. And here, if you like, the outcome is the salesperson makes the sale, the customer buys the product in a pleasant way and gets it delivered effectively. And whether it's perhaps analytics done on emails between them that tells the salesperson your client likes people who get to the point.
I see.
Or, alternatively, they're like people, you can analyse the sort of semantics and think, well, actually, this person has more of a personal relationship with their colleagues. So, you could say, well, how was your holiday last week? And sort of that gets a little bit invasive from a privacy point of view if it's not done in a very careful way. But we're using the IT and the cognitive capabilities of the, whether it's the network or the sort of data resources behind it, to understand the purpose behind what is essentially a phone call. And it no longer becomes a phone call, it becomes a sales interaction. And the same is true whether you're talking to a loved one, whether it's phoning for a complaint, whether it's informational, it could be karaoke. Communication will come in 100,000 million different flavours, and the more we can use the IT resources to make those experiences more effective, more productive, more enjoyable, then the sources of value will come out from that rather than the traditional minutes or messages.
Fascinating as usual. Dean Bobley, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.